excited today to give you this presentation in tandem with Superstar from Industry Kits, My Flash Store, Our Loops, and of course, Modern Producers. So it's a big event, and thank you guys for showing up. All right, let's kick things off. What do you say? Good. Okay, so by showing up today, you're basically this little yellow fish in this picture right here. You're proving to me that you're keen to learn and you want to take your game to the next level, and you're going to be the guy going against the grain. All right? You want to be standing out, and by accumulating knowledge is power, like I said. You're going to give yourself the best sort of foundation to progress as a music producer. And basically, by showing up today, you've made the right decision because, first of all, as I said in the intro, you're going to discover how to make your beats sound just like your favorite producers and just like your favorite tracks by your favorite artists. I'm also going to be teaching you guys today how to instantly improve your mixes that a lot of people struggle with, and it can be the difference between an amateur track and a professional sounding track. So that's going to be the second topic that we discuss today. You're also going to learn from me how to score major placements just like I did. And that's both for artists and also for media, for stuff like TV and movies. So for those of you who are just kind of tuning in, who didn't catch my introduction right at the start, I just want to let you know a little bit about myself. So my name is AD, aka Anno Domini. And of course, I'm the head of a multi-platinum team of 11 professional music producers. And collectively, we're called Anno Domini Nation. Now, if you haven't necessarily heard of us before, like I said earlier, there's a little SoundCloud link in the chat room that's sticky that you can click on just to kind of browse through a medley of little tracks that we've produced for the likes of 50 Cent. We also did tracks for Snoop Dogg, Tech9, Wu-Tang Clan, and so on. And we also work with many renowned brands such as Coca-Cola, Adidas, MTV, NBA, BMW, Sony, and so on and so on. The NFL Sunday games this Sunday. Shout out if you're an NFL fan. You would have been listening to some of our beats during the highlight videos. So even though if you don't necessarily know our name, you would have definitely heard our music on TV and also on channels like YouTube as well. Actually, you can hear our music in over 100 million song plays and 2 billion video views online alone. So if you're a fan of channels like Phase Rain or Epic Rap Battles of History or Baller's Life or Voss and Wheels or something like that on YouTube, you would have definitely heard our music too. So just as sort of a little thank you for showing up today, I want to actually give you something for free at the end of the presentation. So absolutely no strings attached. I'm just going to be handing this out right at the end as a thank you for sort of attending today and listening to the presentation. And what I'm going to be giving you is called the Studio Essentials Emergency Kit, which is a really dope kind of collection of one-shots and sounds and samples that you can use for any kind of beat and any kind of genre. And I'm going to be sending you guys a download link at the end of the presentation for the Wave Edition, which means you can actually import this into any digital audio workstation or software of your choice. So it doesn't matter if you use FL Studio or Cubase or Pro Tools or whatever it is. And that's going to be handed to you completely free at the end of the presentation. Sound good? Okay, so is this for you? Basically, the whole idea of today is to give useful tips and knowledge for every kind of genre of music. So it doesn't really matter if you do electro or pop, or it doesn't matter if you do hip hop like I do. I want you to go away today and have some useful information and grounding to take away and actionable advice that you can implement instantly. And of course, it doesn't really matter if you're a complete beginner, like my man's over here on the left. So if this is what your drum pattern looks like right now, don't sweat it, okay? And of course, I also want to give valuable information to complete studio freaks. So if you're already an advanced producer and you already have kind of the production game on point, and this is what your crazy kind of FL Studio screen looks like over here on the right, then you're still going to walk away with some really useful information. So what are you going to get out of today's session? If you're showing up today and you're a music producer, basically, I would like to teach you how to make your production sound just like Grammy-winning and multi-platinum selling producers. And how would you like to know how to get more placements for your beats? If you're showing up today and you're a DJ, how would you like to have major artists basically waiting at your door and just begging you to be their DJ? And, I really want you guys to be dropping hit songs on their upcoming albums and sold-out shows. And of course, if you've shown up today and you don't necessarily make beats, maybe you're a rapper or a singer, then how would you like to be able to effortlessly produce dope beats for yourself? So you don't have to necessarily be dependent on producers. I want to give you the tools and the knowledge to start making beats for yourself. Does that sound good? All right. So let's just get through some really quick basic house rules for today's session. I obviously want everyone to get the most out of this. So the bottom line is just be cool. Everybody be nice and friendly. No shameless self-promotion, please, in the comment section. That's not what we're here for. So there is going to be some opportunity for networking at the end of the event. So if you want to if you're an artist looking for a producer or a producer looking for an artist, you guys can kind of chop it up after the event. So we're going to have a little networking session where you can post your links, but please leave that until the end of the presentation. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please just kind of write them down and keep them for the end of the webinar, because it's going to be difficult for me to kind of answer everything live as I'm going along. So it'd be much easier if you just kind of write it down. And I promise you at the very end, also because this is the last session, I'm going to take an extra long amount of time just to kind of answer every single question that you guys might have and give you any kind of advice that you need. Okay? And the final rule, just no negativity, no trolling, no hating. We're all in this together. Everybody's here to learn and take something positive away from this. So just like I said, be cool. Okay, so I need to make a little confession just to begin with. Yes, today I'm obviously a multi-platinum producer, and yes, I make a full-time living doing what I love doing, selling my beats online. My journey as a music producer back in sort of the early 2000s when I was like 17, 18, absolutely nobody knew who I was. I was just this little kid from a town in the middle of nowhere in Germany, and I had no brand and no sort of networking opportunities or anything like that to speak of. So here's actually a super embarrassing picture of me when I first started getting into music with some shitty Sony headphones, thinking I'm cool. And yeah, what very few people actually know is that I started my journey as a producer in the middle of nowhere in Germany. That's where I came from originally. And I already had sort of less than a penny in my pocket. I didn't even have money for food some days. And I absolutely had no connections. I had no brand, no money or anything like that. And to be honest with you, I wasn't even talented, you know? I always kind of loved music. I grew up sort of listening to 90s East Coast boom bap, hip hop, like Wu-Tang Clan and stuff like that, and Mobb Deep, Gang Starr. But I never really thought that much about sort of the beat production process, like the actual sort of background process behind how a song gets made. So one day I just decided to kind of experiment a little bit. I downloaded this free software and just started making a few beats for fun. And that's kind of when my music production career started in a way. It was just a hobby. I was just doing things for fun as a fan more than anything. And at the time I was kind of working this 9-to-5 job, which I absolutely hated. I was actually working for this PR company. And all I was doing literally was cutting pictures out of magazines and kind of filing them and logging them. So it was super boring. I hated it. Now, back then when I first started making music, I was actually posting my beats up on a site called soundclick.com. Do you guys know that site? Maybe some of you kind of used it before. But basically, SoundClick, for those of you who don't know it, it was kind of a precursor to SoundCloud. Just think like a shitty kind of backwards version of SoundCloud. But back in the early 2000s, it really was the shit. It was where everybody was posting their music. There was just a ton of artists and producers and stuff like that. Like Soul Lyricist and Gregor definitely know SoundClick, so that's what's up. Philip too. Larrea knows what I'm talking about. So yeah, SoundClick was a big deal back then. But back then, while I started sort of getting into music gradually as a music producer, I didn't really have my own room or anything. There was a time where I was just sleeping on a mattress on the living room floor at my grandma's place for certain reasons that, I'm not going to get into in detail. But my dad wasn't around, so all of a sudden I was the sole breadwinner for my entire family. And obviously that was a lot of pressure on me. And, I just really had to kind of grow up fast and, kind of provide for my family and find alternate ways to sort of make money alongside my 9-to-5 job. And obviously, I was making music, like I said, and I loved making music. So suddenly this kind of light bulb went on in my head, and I was thinking, like, what if I could actually do what I love doing and make a little bit of extra money for my family along the side? So that's kind of where this sort of idea of being a producer and selling beats online first kind of disappeared rather than just as a hobbyist. And sure enough, I was posting my stuff on SoundClick, and slowly, a few sales would trickle in here and there. This kind of screenshot here is what my SoundClick looked like at one point. And, I just kind of had these PayPal instant buy now buttons, and I would sort of manually send people beats. So it was all kind of very amateurish, and it was just kind of early baby steps, But, sure enough, time progressed, and I started getting better as a producer. My marketing game started stepping up. I started building my own websites. So this is up at the top left here is actually my current Anno Domini Nation website, what it looks like. Here's the Mono Producers website. I started getting more involved with the music industry, networking. People really started to recognize my name. And before I knew it, I was kind of working with big artists. And I wasn't just reaching out to them. They suddenly started reaching out to me. And sure enough, finally, I was kind of able to turn my love for music into my full income source. And to be honest, I didn't just make a living. I started making some really, really good money. And it was just endlessly motivating to know that I was doing something that I really enjoyed, and people were paying me for it because they enjoyed it. So the proudest moment that I kind of had from that period was actually being able to afford to put all of my siblings through school, and myself as well. So that's kind of one of my proudest moments and achievements through music. So fast forward a few years later to today. As I mentioned to you guys, I'm kind of living and working in Los Angeles now. I've worked with people like 50 Cent, Snoop Dogg, Wu-Tang Clan, Rick Ross, Vinnie Paz, and many, many more. And also people like Coca-Cola, Sony, MTV. And I kind of went from being this no-name producer from a small town in Germany to suddenly being a multi-platinum producer in Los Angeles. And here's a little picture of me actually earlier in the year at the Grammys in February with my beautiful fiance. So I'm really kind of living the life that I always dreamed I could. And it's just endlessly motivating to be able to get up every day and do what I love doing and get paid for it. And in fact, today I have an entire team of people that work for me, so I can just kind of focus on doing what I love, which is the creative side of music. And of course, I'm sure a lot of you guys can relate to this, but the best thing ever is that nobody tells me what to do or when to wake up. I just kind of set my own schedule and work on my own sort of dime. And I know at the beginning of the presentation, I kind of had a slide of sort of my my earnings. I think it was like 30,000 or something a month, and that was kind of the average from last year. But just to kind of prove to you guys what is possible, here's a little snapshot from my PayPal account last month in August. And I think I made something like, at the bottom here, $89,000 just from beat sales alone. And I'm not saying this to brag at all. I just want to kind of use this as an example to highlight what's possible as an online music producer. Because sometimes people seem to have this idea in their head that you can't make money as a music producer, or it's not a viable profession. But don't let anybody hold you back and tell you something like that, because anything is possible. So how did I do it? The bottom line out of everything is that I wasn't always a famous producer, but and I discovered really early on in my career, I was able to become a major player fast. And those top 3 secrets are actually the ones that I want to share with you guys today. So I've kind of distilled them and kind of formulated 3 distinct sections that I really want to chat to you. And secret number 1 is going to be basically all about how to make your beats sound just as dope as your absolute favorite songs by your absolute favorite artists. The second section, secret number 2, is going to be all about sort of getting that professional radio-ready sound without necessarily having any mixing skills. So this section is going to be absolutely supercharging your mixing. Then finally, section number 3, secret number 3, is going to be how to score major placements, get record label deals, and make it big in the music industry. Let's get things kicked off with secret number 1, how to make your beats sound just as dope as your absolute favorite songs by your absolute favorite artists. So when you get started making beats, one thing that I hear again and again is that people kind of start saying that, oh, being a music producer is so expensive. You need all this equipment. You need keyboards. You need outboard synthesizers. You need a professional studio. You need soundproofing and all this stuff. But let me tell you that that is not true, okay? You don't need expensive equipment to start making professional level beats and create hits today. In fact, I actually started getting placements and making beats just on a laptop in my bedroom. That is all you need. But having said that, if you do want to invest into your craft, if you seriously want to consider sort of music production as a career, and you really want to go above and beyond to sort of reach that next level, then the first thing that you should really drop some cash on are, first of all, a digital audio workstation of your choice. So that's a program, something like FL Studio or Cubase or Pro Tools or something like that. And if you want to kind of trial these and see what works best for your workflow and what you enjoy the most, then you can download free demos of these online and sort of try them out. There's a ton of great tutorials on YouTube that you can watch just to kind of give you a primer on how everything works. The second thing that I would really consider dropping some cash on is a really great set of studio monitors or headphones. So if you prefer to mix on headphones, just invest in some really great ones which have a lot of range. If you want to get some better monitors than studio quality monitors, it's just going to make a world of difference to the quality of your mixing, because obviously the shitty kind of monitors and shitty headphones, they don't give you the full spectrum of sound, and you're losing different frequencies, and you're not really hearing everything in the mix. So, a lot of information gets lost. So you really want to invest in a good set of those. The third thing you want to drop some cash on is a good MIDI controller. So, for example, a keyboard or something like that, which you can hook up to your laptop or your computer, and that's just going to make composing your melodies that much easier. And it's actually also going to be a lot easier for you to kind of compose drum lines, because you can kind of just play them instantly on your MIDI controller instead of kind of programming them in with your keyboard on your laptop, which, by the way, is completely possible. You can just kind of click and press buttons on the keyboard on your computer, but a MIDI controller is going to make everything that much easier. And then the fourth sort of option, which you should really drop cash on, and this is probably the most important thing, and that is top quality sounds. Okay? If you're using low quality sounds in your production, for example, factory default settings from your software, or maybe like a free kit that you just downloaded online on some piracy site or something like that, chances are these are going to be low quality sounds. You probably don't even have the license for them, and in turn your music is going to turn out sounding crappy. Okay? I like to kind of tell people that you can't polish a turd. You guys heard that before? So basically, if you start with shitty sounds to begin with, there's no way that your beat is going to turn out sounding dope at the end, okay? You need to have a solid foundation, so you need the top quality sounds to begin with. Does that make sense? Okay, so how can you upgrade your sound? There is two ways to basically get high quality sounds, and the first one of these is hardware-based sounds. So I'm talking about sort of, if you're a hip-hop producer, your Korg Tritons or your Yamaha motives and stuff like that, or your outboard synthesizers. You can basically record directly from the tools themselves. But of course, unless you kind of heavily edit those sounds, then they're going to sound pretty generic and like often weak and played out, because obviously 100,000 producers around the world probably have the Korg Triton, and they all use the exact same synths and string sounds. So, the sounds are going to sound really generic and played out. So unless you really kind of go above and beyond to layer and edit those, then people are going to call you out, and it's going to sound kind of cheesy and old school. Do you know what I'm talking about? The second kind of way to get high quality sounds is software based. And here I'm really talking about kind of presets for popular VSTs, for example, for Contact or for Massive or Silent. And the advantage of the software-based sounds, obviously, is that they are much cheaper. So if you're buying a good keyboard, it will probably cost you upwards of $1,000, whereas a preset bank might just be like 10 or 20 bucks. Software-based sounds, much cheaper. And of course, there is virtually an infinite pool of sounds that you can choose from, and they're constantly updated. So you're never going to run out of software-based sounds that you can kind of download and use. All right? And just to kind of give you an idea of the kind of the most popular preset banks that I've seen producers use, I've been to a lot of high-end studios. I've interacted with a lot of music producers, for example, Superstar O. And some of the most popular ones that you can kind of write down and research if you want are the NI Massive Super Bundle. Also, the Pyrex library is a super popular one, and the For God Bundle and Synths of Chaos for some incredible kind of synth sounds, whether you're using kind of hip-hop, trap, or EDM production. Those are some really great ones to write down and check out. So how do you create the perfect beat? As I mentioned earlier, obviously you need high quality sounds to begin with. If you're a music producer that likes to sample or use one-shots and stuff like that, then I would always make sure that you're using high quality WAV files instead of MP3. And a WAV file is basically a more lossless audio format. whereas the MP3 is heavily compressed, so you're losing a lot of sound information. So always try and start with high quality sounds, okay? The second thing that I would really consider is layering sounds. And a lot of beginner producers don't really understand this concept or know what it is. But basically, think of it like this, okay? Two sounds that are okay individually, if you play them together on top of each other, they can create this kind of wonderful sound baby when combined, okay? So it's like synergy. You're taking two weak sounds and you combine them, and all of a sudden you have a really cool, dope, original, unique sound. And you can create an infinite amount of new sounds just by sort of recombining other sounds. And you can make your melodies sound that much richer. So for example, you might play two brass melodies on top of each other to make it sound much more bombastic and orchestral and thick because you have kind of different layers. It works really great for drums as well, especially layering kind of kicks or snares. If you've ever heard kind of Timbaland's production work, any Timbaland fans in the house, by the way? But he's a kind of king of layering. He always does like dozens of kicks or snares on top of each other. And that's how he gets that really sort of heavy, punchy, snappy kind of sound to his drum lines. Mikey's a Timbaland fan. That's cool. Tiafo too. Flores. That's what's up, guys. Okay. So the next thing in creating the perfect beat is to learn scales. And this is going to be a really worthwhile investment for you, just kind of learning a little bit of basic music theory, just learning some basic scales, because that's going to teach you how to easily find which notes sound good together in your melody. It's just going to speed up your beat process, and it's going to make you sort of realize instantly which sounds are going to sound good together. And obviously, once you know the scales, you can also play chords, because all chords are is basically sort of a combination of notes from a scale. And then chords obviously lead into chord progressions, and those are the kind of sort of really bombastic, epic combinations of notes. Okay, so scales, definitely something you want to research and maybe watch some tutorials. Once you know some basic scales, you know, a C major, a C minor, and stuff like that, then you can also know how to play a C minor chord. And then you realize how dope these kind of sounds, these notes sound together, and you can create an entire beat just based off your knowledge. So definitely worth kind of putting that work in to learn scales. Another thing that you want to consider is to add dynamics. And when I say add dynamics, what I'm talking about here is kind of panning your sounds in a 360-degree fashion, so sort of to the left speaker, to the middle, and to the right. A lot of beginner producers, they just have all their sounds in the middle, and it can sound a little one-dimensional. Whereas if you start panning your sounds to different speakers, what you create is this kind of immersive sound experience with kind of sounds jumping at you from all over. And it can just have an amazing effect. So for me, for example, I might start panning my percussion to the left. In the center of your mix, you obviously have your kicks and your snares and your main melodies, maybe even slightly displaced. You can kind of experiment with that. And then on the right side, I tend to like having my hat. So just go away maybe today, later, and try this out on your own and kind of experiment and just see what kind of a difference that can make to the fullness of your mix and how great your beat sounds. Don't forget to leave space, please. You're obviously a music producer who probably is making beats with the end result of having a vocalist, a singer, or a rapper on your beat. So if there's no space for their vocals in the beat, if it's too busy, there's too much going on, then they're not going to be able to record. They're not going to be inspired by your beat. They're not going to want to sort of record on it. And obviously they won't license or buy your beat. So never forget that the vocals are the final last instrument when you're beat building. Don't disregard them. Just make sure your beat isn't too full. All right? Don't go too crazy. So you've probably heard of this abbreviation before, KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. So just write that on your forehead when you're making beats, okay? Now, I know I said this presentation would be fairly generic when it comes to kind of what genre it's applicable to. But obviously, I know a lot of you guys make hip-hop beats and are hip-hop producers. So I just wanted to give a few sort of specific tips to you hip-hop producers. And the first one of these would be beginner producers kind of overusing guitar riffs. It's one of the single most misused sound elements out there. Just ask Lil Wayne. And honestly, if you misuse guitar riffs, they can sound really cheesy. So just make sure you don't go overboard and create room for other elements. So don't create an entire beat with just electric guitar throughout it. It's just going to not sound great. So use sparingly. Guitar riffs are great, but I know they sound epic and cool and kind of rockin', but don't overdo it, okay? Then a really great element to hip-hop beats is using horns, especially if you're kind of doing dirty south or trap music. And horns are just really a great way for setting off your hip-hop beats, to give them that extra kind of epic dimension, because they have this anthemic and uplifting vibe, especially when you're creating an epic hook. And usually with the horns, it's going to be really important for you to layer them. I was talking earlier about layering. So if you just have a single kind of trumpet sound or something like that, it can sound kind of weak and one-dimensional. But if you combine that with a few different brass instruments, all of a sudden it sounds like this entire orchestra of music just coming at you, and it can give it a really dope kind of epic vibe. You might want to look into is to add groove to your drumline, especially if you're wanting to make kind of boom bap hip hop beats. And groove is basically just a slight displacement in the timing of the beat. And what that does is basically it transforms a rigid kind of drumline into something a bit more warm and natural and organic, and it can just make a world of difference to the sound of your drums and the sound of the overall beat. So just to give you a quick example, for example, like a rigid drumline might sound something like boom, ch, boom, ch, boom, boom, ch. Whereas if you add a little bit of groove, all of a sudden you're getting like boom, ch, boom, boom, ch, boom, ch. Do you know what I'm saying? It just gives it a bit more groove. It makes it a little bit more groovy and natural and organic. So not all of the drums are hitting exactly on the one. They're slightly displaced, and it just makes it sound more sort of natural. Okay? So if you're using FL Studio, in the drum sequencer, there's actually literally a little sort of groove slider, and you can just kind of pull that to the right a bit and experiment with it and see what sounds kind of good in your mix. And the groove is just a great way, like I said, to kind of make your beat just sound a little bit more organic and just dope. Obviously, don't overdo it, because then if you have too much groove, your drums are going to be really displaced, and then it's going to be hard for rappers to kind of flow on it. Another thing to consider is to switch up your drum pattern throughout the beat, okay? Don't just use the exact same four-bar loop over and over again, because it gets really boring after a while. So certainly every 8 bars or so, at least, you want to sort of fade out some of the drums, like leave out maybe a few kicks or snares in places, or switch up your hat pattern, just to kind of give it a bit more sort of momentum. And it just makes your beats that much more interesting and more three-dimensional, okay? Especially kind of leading up to hooks, what I like to do is just gradually kind of fade out some of the instruments. Like I might start dropping out the hats or some of the snares or something. And then when you hit them with full force with all of the drums again in the hook, it just hits that much harder. And then another point to consider as well is do not forget the bass line, please. A lot of amateur producers, they make a dope beat, they compose all the melodies and the drums, and they think it's finished, and they try and put it online, and people don't like it. And that's because it's missing a bass line, which is sort of the underpinning element to your beat. Often the bass line is what people groove to, and it just kind of gives it that depth and that feeling of kind of, just immersiveness. So don't forget the bass line. Even if it's just a very basic one, you can literally just kind of replay some of the notes from your melody and just kind of hold those. So it doesn't have to be a super complicated bass line, something simple, but don't forget the bass line. And then a final little tip, just from me personally, is I like to use a lot of reverse crashes and crashes. And these can be really great, especially kind of leading into an epic hook. So what I sometimes do is I kind of put a reverse crash right before the hook, and then the crash when the hook begins, just to kind of like give it that booming moment. And what a reverse crash is, it just it's like a sound. It kind of sounds like this, like a shh. So it just gets louder and louder and progresses, and it just kind of builds up momentum as we're leading into the hook. So they can be a really awesome element to your beat. Now, I know sometimes the whole beat building process can seem a little intimidating, and sometimes you're going to be sitting around, you won't really know where to start. And trust me when I say that every single multi-platinum music producer has had a moment in their careers where they had producer's block, where they just couldn't think of anything good. I've definitely had moments like that where for hours I was just kind of staring at the screen and just playing like garbage melodies. So it's absolutely legitimate to basically seek inspiration from things like loop kits and construction kits. And they can be a really great starting point to kind of give you inspiration for something completely new. And I'm not saying, obviously, just completely lift someone else's melody or completely sample something one for one. But what you can do is you can sort of chop it up, you can edit it, you can recombine elements from construction kits and loop kits, and just kind of use it as an inspiration for something new. And you'll see that instantly this is going to give you sort of sparks of creativity to get you flying. And actually tons and tons of chart hits that I hear on the radio all the time and on MTV. For example, recently stuff by Rihanna, Drake, Soulja Boy, Lil Wayne, and so on. They're often based off a selection of pre-made loops, and often they're just kind of chopped up or edited. As a music producer and owning a sort of production website, I recognize a lot of those loops, and I hear them again and again. And often, you know, the producers are just kind of editing, adding, combining, and like chopping up melodies and loops and stuff like that. So it's completely legitimate, and it's completely a part of the process of music production. And the great thing about loop kits and construction kits is that obviously they're much better than using samples, because with samples you have the whole headache of kind of sample clearance, of copyright issue and stuff like that. But having said that, obviously you need to make sure that you check that the loop and construction kits are royalty free. All right, so that's really important to just kind of bear in mind when you're kind of downloading or using these loops and construction kits, that you make sure you check that they're royalty free and you have the license to kind of commercialize them. So just to give you an idea again of some of the sort of very best loop packs and construction kits out there, I've been chatting to Superstar O about this, getting his feedback, and obviously taking other producers' feedbacks on board too. Some of the best kits that you might want to research are, for example, the R-Loops kit series. There's also the North series for those of you into kind of the OVO Drake, The Weeknd kind of sound. Also, Keys of Legend and the Dark Hour Melody Pack are very dope kind of collections of key melodies for instant inspiration. And also, I really like the LGND series too. For example, recently I've been using the Sarah Smile construction kit just for kind of inspiration and chart-friendly kind of music. Some really dope stuff in there. So check those out. All right. So let's talk a little bit now about secret number 2. Now you've made hopefully the perfect beat. Your beat is on point. It sounds dope. But now what you want to do is you want to get that professional radio ready sound. And you want to do it without necessarily having any mixing skills. And that's what I want to show you right now. So just to get a really quick primer, what is mixing? Basically, after you've already sort of composed your melodies, you've played your melodies, you've kind of laid out your drum line and arranged all your sounds, mixing is then the process of blending those individual sounds and tracks in a recording so that the end result, the mix, as possible. And basically the whole mixing process, it includes things like balancing levels of volumes, fine-tuning the sounds of every instrument or a voice if you're doing a whole song, and also panning tracks between speakers, which we talked earlier a little bit in the dynamism sort of section, and also adding effects to enhance the mix. So after this sort of mixing process, then the final step to creating a finished piece of music is the mastering. And there's a difference between mixing and mastering. The mastering is then going to involve things like EQ, which is equalization, also controlling the dynamic range, and also editing highs and lows and stuff like that. So the bottom line is you never start mastering your beat until you have finished your mix. Okay? Please remember that. Write it down if you have to. But too many beginner producers kind of make that mistake. They master as they go along. But don't do that. Never start mastering until you've finished your mix. 6 golden rules of mixing and mastering. Number 1, the very first thing that you should always do is you assign every sound to an individual mixer track. So depending on which program or software you use, your mixer track might look something like this in the screenshot here. And what you want to do is you want to link every single sound that you've played to an individual mixer track. And when I say every sound, I mean literally every drum, so the kick, the snare, the hat, everything separate, and link it to a mixer track. The second thing you want to do, golden rule number 2, you group instruments and sounds together that belong together. So we were talking about layering and stuff like that earlier. If you've layered various melodies, for example, various brass instruments on top of each other, you might want to group those together and then mix and master them together. Okay? In the same way, if you've kind of layered a bunch of kick drums together, you might want to group those together and then edit them together. All right? Step number 3 is you always adjust your volumes first. And sort of the bottom line of all of this is that you start low and then you just gradually increase the volume one by one. You actually, once I've linked all my channels and grouped them, I like to put the volume down to like -20 or something like that. And then I'll just gradually kind of slide every sound by itself as I'm kind of playing the mix and just adjust the volume and tweak it to see sort of how the volumes sound best together. So you always start from the bottom, Never try and sort of, start at 0 and then go up the top, because then, that's just going to cause all kinds of headache for you, because your mix keeps getting louder and louder and you don't really hear anything. So start from the bottom, start really low, and just gradually increase the volumes. And what you should always strive to do is to leave at least 6 decibels of headroom. Okay? So the peak volume, you want it to come to about -6 decibels. By the way, for those of you that don't know, in the mastering process, anything above 0 decibels is called clipping. And what happens when you have a sound that's over 0 decibels and it's clipping is that you get all kinds of distortion once you export it. And obviously, artists aren't going to be able to record on it because everything's already too loud, and you're just getting all kinds of sort of headaches, which you want to avoid. All right? So as you're increasing the volumes one by one, leave 6 decibels of headroom. The fourth step is you add your plugins. For example, you want to add your equalizer, your compressor, and at the very, very last step, you add your limiter. And please, please always add the limiter last, because what the limiter then does is it takes your overall volume to the maximum level that it should be. That's why you also leave the headroom initially, okay? Hopefully that all kind of makes sense now. So you add your plugins, equalizer, for example, compressor, and then at the very last step, the limiter. Fifth golden rule is once you've finished all your mixing, and this might sound kind of weird to you guys, but walk away from it, okay? Just leave it alone. Just take some time off, go make some food, maybe just chill out, do something completely different, maybe work on some different music if you still want to kind of get in the workflow, and just leave it alone, and then come back and revisit it later. Because what happens often is if you're listening to the same beat over and over and over, is that your ears start becoming deaf to certain sounds and frequencies. And, you're not going to get the best mixing results because you're not hearing everything clearly. Have you guys has ever kind of created the mix and then thought it was dope, and then the next day you listen to it and it sounds whack as hell? I'm sure it happens to people all the time, right? And the reason being is if you just spend too much time listening to the same sounds over and over, you just become deaf to them. So you want to just go away, revisit them later, and then you're going to have a much clearer kind of idea of how it should sound. Lorena was talking about ear fatigue. Yeah, that's exactly it, brother. You know what I'm talking about. So the sixth and final thing that you want to do is to test in multiple environments. And when I say that, I mean basically if you're sort of making your beats on studio monitors, you want to maybe just bounce it out and listen to it on some cheap iPhone headphones or something like that. You also want to listen to it in the car, because what you might find is that something that sounds really great on sort of studio monitors sounds crappy in headphones when listening on your phone or something like that, which is how most end consumers are going to listen to the music. So you want to make sure that it sounds dope in headphones and in the car too. All right. And by the way, for those of you who are kind of listening to this, they already know all of this stuff. You advanced producers, I am going to drop some more kind of advanced mixing tips in a minute too. But just for a second, let's just talk about the mastering chain, okay? The concept of the mastering chain. And what the mastering chain is, basically, it's the order with which you place your effect on the final master channel. And basically how you add these depends on the beat. So it depends on what kind of a beat you're making or what kind of a effect you want to create. But just to give you an example, for example, a simple hip-hop beat mastering chain, and this is perfectly sufficient, would be an equalizer followed by a compressor followed by a limiter. Running is mentioning Ozone. Yeah, that's like a really great sort of mastering suite of plugins that you can use. So Ozone is very dope. I'll talk a little bit more about some of these in a minute. Some of the sort of best mastering suites that people, that professional grade music producers use include, for example, the Waves suite, also Ozone, Slate Digital, and T-Rex. For me personally, I like to use Ozone as well. Sometimes I use T-Rex if I'm going for more of that kind of warm boom bap sound. So if you don't know about these, definitely write them down, check them out too. And what you should always remember when it comes to the mastering chain is that less is more, okay? If you find that you're needing a ton of effects and just stuff to make your drums hit hard and your melodies sound good and shine, then you should probably revisit your mix and look for some better sounds. All right, once again, guys, you can't polish a turd. I can't sort of emphasize this enough. If you start with shitty sounds, you can't try and make them sound dope by just applying tons of effects. It's not going to work. It's much better to start with really great sounds and then keep it as simple as possible when it comes to the mastering and mixing. Mikey is throwing me a quick question. He says, is Lander worth it for consistency and saving time? Lander is kind of a strange one because I feel like I've tried it a few times and I always get like a mixed bag of results. I feel like sometimes it sounds good, but other times it sounds really shitty. The problem with the Lander is that they always just automatically apply the exact same settings to every single song that you send or every beat that you upload. So unfortunately, the process of mixing and mastering is kind of individual and unique to every song. So you should really just try and do it individually. Don't try and rely on stuff like Lander. Okay? All right, let's get into a few advanced mixing tips from me personally. And I just want to begin by saying that to me, the equalizer is probably the single most important mixing plugin that you have in your arsenal. But having said that, it's kind of a double-edged sword because it really needs to be used with caution and with control. So here is a little screenshot, for example, of the equalizer in FL Studio. You guys might have seen this one before and used it. And what I just really want to emphasize to you guys is that generally you're going to get much better results from cutting undesirable frequencies than you ever will from boosting the ones that you want to emphasize. Producers, even professional ones, I have seen make this mistake, and they want to kind of have their bass or their kick sort of hit harder. So what they do is they open the equalizer, they just kind of pull up all these frequencies and just boost the low end. But that is a mistake, okay? Certain frequencies can actually provide the exact same effect as boosting another one and tends to sound way more natural. It's only that when you can't achieve the desired results with a cut that you should apply an EQ gain. And basically my top tip is to apply a high pass on everything that doesn't need much bass information. And the only kind of channels on your mixer that need bass information really are sort of the bass and the kick. Everything else you can kind of apply a high pass on, and it's going to have the same effect as boosting your low frequencies on your bass and your kick. Okay? And let me tell you, it's going to do wonders to the clarity of your mix. You're instantly going to hear the difference. As well, a little advanced kind of tip is that most of the time you will want your effects to be wet, which basically means you want to have your effects applied. For example, your hall or your compression or whatever it is. But don't underestimate the appeal of cold, dry sounds, okay? Don't just apply effects to everything for no reason, because actually some dry sounds in your mix can sound amazing, especially used kind of sparingly throughout your drum line or stuff like that. They can sound really dope. Just ask Pharrell, okay? He's kind of the king of this, Pharrell from the Neptunes. He just adds a few percussive elements and a few drums here and there, completely dry, and it just sounds really dope in the mix of his tracks. Now, I know sometimes the mixing process can be a little bit daunting, but a kind of sort of a way to cut corners and to get instant professional grade quality sounds and results is to actually use some go-to drum kits and libraries, which often offer pre-processed sounds that have already been mixed and mastered by audio technicians and studio engineers to perfection and already kind of have compression and EQ applied. And what that means basically is that you get a rich and a full and a kind of professional sound straight out of the box. And obviously you can still kind of tweak that to your preference. And believe me when I say that every single professional Grammy-winning and multi-platinum producer has some go-to kits that they use. All right? They don't sort of record the entire bass guitar line or the entire drum set with live drums every single time they sit in the studio and want to make a beat. That would just take forever. It's extremely impractical, so that's not how it works. So it's perfectly fine to use some go-to drum kits and libraries and stuff like that. Okay? Especially things like 808s and bass sounds and stuff like that. Every single producer uses their go-to favorite kit. And actually some of the most popular kind of drum kits and collections of sounds that I hear people like Superstar O use, and also Vibe, Cardo, 808 Mafia, Sledgen, Kato, and so on, that they use repeatedly in their productions include, for example, the 808 Massacre. I'm sure many of you producers have heard of that one before. It's very popular. Also 808 Warfare for awesome 808 drums. The Trapped in Love series of drum kits is extremely popular because they have some really high-end and very, very cool, unique kind of drum sounds. I hear a ton of producers use these. Also, the Ultima drums and the Superstar O Pro drums are also very, very cool and dope, and a lot of people use those. So if you don't know those yet, write them down, check them out. At some point, you can revisit those. So we talked about how to kind of create a better beat, and we talked a little bit about how to mix that beat better for you too. So secret number 3 that I want to drop on you guys is how to then go and score major placements with your beats and get record label deals and also to make it big in the music industry. So when it comes to getting artist placements, basically working with big name artists and having your beats featured and kind of chart hits and stuff like that, what it comes down to is that it's still possible to reach out to artists directly. For example, through networking events, open submissions, sometimes even Facebook. You'd be surprised how many artists write back to you if you just shoot them a message on Facebook. So while it's still kind of possible to reach out to them directly, let me tell you that we will have much better success researching and reaching out to their managers and their A&Rs. The reason being is that a lot of these big artists, they have a lot of layers of kind of management between them and sort of the producers and the fans and stuff like that. And often they don't even check their own websites themselves or their Facebook pages, and they certainly don't sort of give out their personal number or their personal emails, okay? So it's much better for you to invest that time and effort to actually research their managers and A&Rs, for example, through their official website or their label website. And you can also actually find out the information of these people on LinkedIn and also Facebook and stuff like that. And then you want to contact them instead of the artists directly. The reason being is that these people are actually there to interact with you, and they're kind of the go-to between you and the artist. So it's going to be much easier for you to network with them and build a relationship with them. So for all communication, basically, the way you should play it is you send an email to them first, because an email is kind of sort of an informal way to initially address who you are and what you want. And it's not going to kind of, give people any kind of pressure, because they can reply on their own dime whenever they're able to. Then if you don't receive any kind of response from your very first email, you should wait at least sort of like 3 to 5 days or something like that before you follow up with another email. So these people are usually extremely busy. So definitely please don't blow up their inbox with like 10 emails in a day just saying like, yo, what's up? Why haven't you replied yet? And stuff like that. So just don't be pushy, okay? Play it cool. But at the same time, be reachable 24/7 in case these people want to get back to you. Just be ready to instantly sort of answer them. And if after your second email you still don't get a response, then you can follow up with a phone call. And what you want to do is you just want to call them and you want to be respectful. You just want to say, I was wondering if you had a chance to read my email yet. And then, that's going to hopefully create much more positive results for you guys. And a top tip from me personally as well is always try to send out your emails just before kind of 9 a.m. in the respective time zone of whoever you're trying to reach, because that is sort of the time that they get to the office and start working. And if you send your email at that time, it means that it's going to pop up at the top of their inbox. And as I'm sure you guys are aware, like usually we read our inboxes from top to bottom. So it's going to be the very first thing that they click on. And also people will tend to be much more in the moods to say yes and much more kind of in a positive mood to collaborate and stuff like that in the morning than they would, for example, at 10 p.m. at night or something like that. Okay? So try and do that from now on. Just to give you a little example, this might be sort of an email that I send out to a manager or an A&R of an artist, like a very simple kind of example of it. First thing to note is that in the subject line, you want to be concise about what you're asking for. Never do you want to send out an email that says like, hey, or what's up in the subject line, okay? That's a surefire way to get your email landing in the spam box. Then what you want to do is you want to start by being respectful, and you want to tell them why you're reaching out, and you want to tell them who you are and why you should be taken seriously. So for example, if you're talking to them about a specific artist, you might want to sort of mention that you're reaching out because you're a producer and you heard this artist's work and you think that your stuff would fit perfectly with that artist. You want to obviously tell them about your name. You want to tell them about your credits if you have any interviews you've done or any sort of awards you've achieved or anything like that. So just any kind of positive things that you can drop are going to be really sort of useful. Also drop obviously a way for them to reach out to you, for example, a website or an email or a phone number. Then the next thing you always want to do is flatter people. All right, everybody loves flattery and puts them in a good mood. So just mention the fact that you love the artist, you love his recent body of work, and be specific. Okay, so research this. If you brought out a single recently, just like talk about it and why you think it's great, and then sort of relate that back to your value proposition, what you're offering them. So, for example, you might want to say, oh, the recent single by this artist was great. I actually do a lot of production in a similar vein, which I think your artist would sound amazing on. I would love to send you some beats to kind of demo and check out. And always offer them something. Never ask for something. Don't hit them up and be like, I want a job from you or something like that. No, offer them something. Say something like, I would like to send you some beats which you can use. They're free and untagged. Hopefully we can work together. Okay? So that would be kind of a simple email to send out to try and get yourself networking with and building a relationship with managers and A&Rs. So then once you've hopefully built this relationship, it should obviously be nurtured by regular communication. And when I say regular, I do not mean frequent, okay? Please don't blow up their inbox and piss them off. Don't send them absolutely every single shitty beat that you make, which is half finished. Only send them finished, completed, high-quality work, and only the very best ones, and maybe once every 2 weeks or something like that, okay? So it's very important that you don't blow up their inbox and send them unfinished or unproven or crappy work. Always send your best stuff, and only if it's relevant as well, all right? Only send relevant stuff to that respective manager or label. When you're given the opportunity to submit some work, unless you're sort of otherwise instructed to do so, I would suggest that you always do the following. Number one is you always send your beats in high quality MP3 format, either as an email attachment, which is preferred because it basically means that they can play the file instantly from within their inbox, or as a direct download link if you have to. So don't send them off to some third-party sort of scam site which has a bunch of like downloader tools which you need just to reach the files. But it has to be an instant download link if it's not playable in their inbox. Okay, so just make it as easy as possible to them, because otherwise, the more sort of steps they have to take to listen to your music, the more likely they are to not bother. The second thing, which I highly recommend, is to only send your 10 very best beats at most. Don't send them your entire catalog of 500 beats. It should be self-evident, but so many people do that. And nobody's going to listen to them, okay? 10 would be the absolute maximum sort of attention span that anybody listening to your beats would have. So only send them the 10 very best. Also, kind of tying in with that, only send them beats that are relevant to that artist or the scope of the project. Listen to the recent releases and kind of research what kind of a sound they've been going after recently. Do not send a gangster 50 Cent hip-hop beat to Taylor Swift. All right? And likewise, please don't send a Charlotte Trainer sort of wishy-washy pop beat to Snoop Dogg. It's not going to fly, even if you think it's the dopest shit ever. They're just not going to use it. The fourth point to remember is you should include at the very most one tag at the beginning of your beat. So please don't litter your entire beat with like 1,000 tags throughout the entire beat, because nobody's going to listen to that and be inspired or even instantly record a demo or something like that. So it's just going to hinder you. If you're worried about sort of people stealing your work or about copyright, then remember that you're dealing with sort of major labels and huge artists, all right? They're not going to risk sort of getting sued over one stupid beat, and they have the money. So if they like your music, you will get paid. You don't have to worry about people stealing your shit, all right? So just chill out. Put one tag at the beginning to brand yourself at most. Don't tag the entire beat. Fifthly, and perhaps most importantly, is that you very clearly label your files and add any kind of required meta information. So many producers send me and other people beats all the time, and they're called like beat25.mp3 or like superbeat.mp3 or something like that. And basically a week later, I'm browsing through my download folder. I see superbeat.mp3. I don't know who that's from. I don't know who sent me that. I don't know what it is, and I just delete it. Okay? When you're sending beats out to people, you don't know where your beats are going to end up, and you don't know like whether they still have your email information and stuff like that. So always make sure you label your files very clearly. For example, super producer, and then maybe you put the title of your beat. Perhaps you also want to include the BPM information, which just makes it easier for sort of studio technicians to instantly use without having to research all of that and beat map it. And perhaps you also want to sort of put your website or some way to reach you in brackets. All right. So this is how a file should look when you're sending it out for placements and to artists. Sound good? Looks like Beat Junkie loves my turd polish comment. So that's cool. Oli is asking me, how do you tag a beat? Basically a short vocal snippet, just shouting out your brand name or something like that. For example, Anno Domini Beats or something like that. And it's just a short vocal snippet at the beginning. For example, you guys might have heard like Mustard on the Beat Ho, or like Mike Will Made It or something like that on the radio whenever those sort of producers' beats play. All right. Now, in order to get more artist placements and more opportunities, what you want to do is you want to subscribe to artist and record label newsletters so that you're always keeping informed about sort of new releases and opportunities. So just kind of research your favorite labels and your favorite artists, subscribe to them wherever you can, and kind of keep in the loop. You also want to go to networking events. You want to go to conferences, open mic sessions, talent showcases, sort of producer beat battles, or whatever there is in your area or beyond. And the point is to build a gradual relationship. So what that means is basically you don't show up and you don't just kind of throw out your beat tapes like Smarties or like, just raining down flyers on people. Please don't do that. Don't shove your demo CD in people's faces. You want to build a gradual relationship and just play it professional and cool. It's fine to chat to people and ask them for their email or their business cards to submit music to them, but don't bring a bunch of demo CDs with you because they're just going to land in the trash. Always also make sure that you have your own business cards with you, and always make sure that you're prepared to sort of hand them out, to be prepared to kind of chat to people and whatnot, and state who you are. So obviously, if you live in somewhere where there isn't many networking events and stuff like that, for example, for me, I started in a tiny village in Germany, like I told you guys, then what you can still do is you can do sort of the online networking events. You can hang out in like forums and things like that. You can obviously call people and network that way, and just try and, if you need to, travel to like the big events. So obviously some of the really big events, they can be kind of expensive. For example, if you're going to MIDEM or ASCAP or like South by Southwest, so any of these big networking events, they can be pricey. So it's really, really important that whenever you go to one of these, or even the smaller ones, is that you have a game plan. You know who you are, what your value proposition is, and what you want. So research who's going to be there, what label are they from, what can I sort of tell them to convince them that I'm the right person to work with. And obviously make sure that you can list off all your credits and sort of your achievements and stuff like that. The other thing, obviously, is to keep an eye on social media. So always keep track of your favorite artists and stuff and favorite labels on Facebook and Twitter and stuff like that. And also you can check out sites like Modern Beats or Music X-Ray or Taxi, or even like iStandard Producers and stuff. Sometimes, they have some cool opportunities. Personally, I never really used these that much, but I have definitely heard of some producers who have had personal success through a kind of opportunities that they found posted on these kind of sites. I know somebody earlier, I think I saw in the chat room, asked me about PMP Worldwide and BeatStars. So those are definitely other valid choices to kind of find these placement opportunities. So, give it a shot, just browse them, see what you can come up with, and just make it happen for yourself. A little bit about media placements. When I'm talking about media placements, what I mean is basically having your music and your beats featured on TV, in movies, in video games, and stuff like that. And some of the basic rules from getting artist placements kind of translate to media placements too, in the sense that, first of all, you do not want to send your music directly to companies themselves. Instead, what you want to do is you want to research the music supervisors, they're called, or the sort of music department employees in those departments of the companies. And you can actually find this information, for example, in film, TV, and video game credits. At the very end, for example, there's a section that's going to be like music department or something like that. And you can literally find people's names and then research their information and how to reach them. And you can also find them on sites like LinkedIn or the International Movie Database, so imdb.com. You can literally go to your favorite TV show, for example, I don't know, Big Brother or something like that, okay? Or like hip hop in Atlanta. And then you want to scroll down to where it says music department, click on that, and then you'll find all the people who worked on the music in that movie and who put together the music. And then you can find these people, you can add them, you can interact with them, and again, just be respectful and cool. And then you're going to be able to build a relationship and eventually send the music to use in those kind of TV shows. So again, the same rules apply. Please be respectful, be dependable, and absolutely nurture relationships. And of course, format your music correctly too. So when it comes to media placements, often you'll find that the formatting is a little bit different than when it comes to artists. The reason being is that, for example, for TV music, they obviously want more progression in your beat. They might not want sort of an intro because they want you to get straight into the action. And they also might want to have a high quality wave file right from the bat. Okay, but they will probably let you know this. Finally, I would really suggest that you do not spend too much time with the huge music library sites. For example, Audio Jungle or like Pump Audio and stuff like that. Because basically these really big music library sites, they have hundreds of thousands of musicians uploading their music on a daily basis. And they have absolutely zero incentive to try and sort of get you placements and help you, because they just have so many members, and your music more likely than not is just going to get lost and nothing is going to come out of it. So instead of that, what I really strongly suggest is that you guys form strategic partnerships with smaller boutique music libraries, which you can sort of research in your area, or sort of in music hotspots like Austin, Los Angeles, and stuff like that. And if you put your music up in the smaller sort of music libraries, they are going to be personally vested in your success and in getting you placements. So much better. Okay? Now, as I already mentioned, media placements, they can often require your beats to be in different formats. So be prepared to sort of edit your beats to however they need them. So please always obviously save your trackouts and your save files and stuff like that. Often, they'll probably say we need more switch ups and changes, because obviously sort of music for movies and TV needs to be fluid and build up tension and maybe have a bit of progression and stuff like that. And of course, it's really important that you make sure that your sounds are professional, first of all, because they're going to be blared out on sort of huge cinema screen monitors or on people's sort of home TV screens. So they need to be high quality. And of course, above all, they need to be royalty free. So absolutely no samples or sort of factory default settings or factory default sounds, which you don't have a license to use, because they're obviously going to make you sign a waiver and like a disclaimer saying that nothing is royalty free or sampled, because if they get served copyright notifications, they're going to pass those copyright lawsuits straight on to you. And all of a sudden you're facing hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of damages. Okay. So please, when you're submitting songs for media placements, never use sort of sampled non-royalty free music. Always make sure that you're using stuff which is royalty free and which you have the license for. Now, also, when you're submitting for media placements, you should make sure that you're registered with a royalty collection society. So I'm talking about, for example, BMI or ASCAP or PRS if you're in the UK, or GEMA if you're in Germany. I saw a couple of people like Christopher from Germany, I believe. So definitely register for one of these performance rights societies, because otherwise there's no way for them to sort of pay you royalties for every single time that your music gets played on a TV show. Obviously, often there's also some upfront licensing, which they're going to send you for using your music, but the real money is going to be on the back end for the sort of royalties, okay? And basically, if you just get one TV placement, that could be really big bucks. For example, at the beginning of the presentation, I was telling you guys about sort of an NFL placement we had on Sunday, and that kind of a thing which we had in the past, just sort of like a 10-second snippet from one of our beats, that could be anywhere from like $4,000 to $5,000 for 10 seconds of your beat. All right, that's pretty cool, isn't it? And that was just from sort of one quarter. All right, so if you're on a TV show which gets repeated like again and again and again, you're going to get paid every single time it's on TV. So the bottom line, I guess, in artist placements and also media placements is that you need to be proactive, okay? Please don't just sit around and wait for things to happen. Nobody is going to drop success into your lap. You just got to go out there, you need to want it, and you need to get it, and you got to make things happen for yourself. Sound good?